Hello. My name is Emily. I am a peer leader here at the Writing Center, and I'm going to go ahead and get started on this APA format workshop presented by the UTD Writing Center. Okay, so to get started, this is just a brief agenda for today. We're going to talk about how to format the title page, how to do some in-text citations, and how to format your references. Those are the three main things that I see students have trouble with when they come into the Writing Center. So for the title page, just a brief overview. We've got the paper title at the top here in bold. You need your name, the institution name. So in this case, that can include the department or the school at your university and the university name, the course name and number, your professor's name. If they are a doctor, then make sure to address them as such, and the date that the paper is due. Note that this is not the same thing as the starting date, or at least I sincerely hope it's not. And then you need your page number starting in the upper right corner. You start at page 1 on the title page, even though technically it's not your first page of writing. And so this is pretty easily accessible information online. There's absolutely no need to memorize this, but I do want to talk about some of the steps to format this, just because I think sometimes making this happen in Word or Google Docs or whatever that might be is the roadblock for a lot of students. So I'm going to use Word as an example to talk about how to get your page to look like this. And if you're wondering, this example was taken from the Purdue OWL website. It is one of my favorite resources for all things citation related. So first, a couple of things to note about format. All text should be centered and bold-faced. The title is centered in the top half of the page, but everything else should be centered just within the page as a whole. And again, I'll talk about exactly how we go about doing that. So first, I like to set the spacing to double spaced and remove the added space before or after the paragraph before I start anything, and then set the cursor to the middle of the page and make sure to boldface the text. I then indent about 4 to 5 times. If it's a title that's going to take up 2 lines, I'll indent 4 times. If it's 1 line, I'll indent probably 5 times, and then write the title. And then I will indent another 2 to 3 times. Again, it just depends on how many lines the title itself takes up. Here, make sure you deselect the bold-faced option because the rest of the text is just normal. And then I write all of the other information on its own line. And lastly, I insert the page number. Inserting the page number, that you can do that literally whenever. I just happen to do it last. But I think this is the part that I wanted to get to the most. I think that this demonstration can just help show you where all of these menu options are in Word. Because again, at the end of the day, these technical difficulties tend to be the problem more so than actually just finding the information about what goes where. So again, you'll notice I am making sure that the spacing is set to double and that the space options before and after the paragraph say do not say remove. If it says remove, click that option to remove the space after and before your paragraph. I then set the cursor to the middle of the page and boldface my text by selecting that B option under the font menu. At this point, you can write whatever your title is. Obviously, I don't have a real paper to write here, so I am simply writing insert sample title here or something like that. Then I indent about 3 times. Oh yeah, I indented about 5 times before I wrote the title. I'm indenting another 3 times, and here I am going to start writing in all of the information that would normally go here. So in this case, my name is Emily Profit. I'm putting that on that line. In this case, we are at the University of Texas at Dallas, so I'm putting that. If this was for a particular course in a particular department, I suppose I would put the department name first. Here I'm just putting a made-up course code and number. We don't have an English 101 course here, but that's what I'm putting. And I'm also including that it is the APA workshop because that's what this is. Here is just where you would put your professor's name. Again, if they're a doctor, instead of saying professor, you would say doctor. And then you include the date that this paper is due. Once again, that is not the date you started writing this paper. I believe that is the convention for MLA, but that is not the convention for APA. Lastly, you're going to switch the top ribbon to the Insert tab, and all the way over here in the header footer section, there's an option dedicated to page numbers. You'll go click top of page and make sure you click option 3, which right justifies it. And so that's how you format your title page. So I hope that clears up any confusion you might have had about how to actually get your title page to look like this in Word. And with that, we can move on to the rest of our workshop and not start the video again. Okay, so the next topic is in-text citations. In general, APA in-text citations will include the author last name and the source publication date. If there is no author, you will use the title or abbreviated title of the work itself. That's slightly different if it's written by an organization. In that case, you know, if it's published by the World Health Organization or the ASPCA, you would use the organization name. If it has a very common acronym, you can just specify what that acronym is one time, say like World Health Organization or WHO, and then use it from there on out. But otherwise, if there's truly no author, you would just use the abbreviated title. If there's no date, you'd use ND in place of date. That might be true of some online sources like websites, blogs, things like that. And lastly, if you're using a direct quotation, then that will often have a page number if it's in a written source, like a print source, and you will specify what page number you can find that specific quotation on. If you're paraphrasing, then you don't really have to give a page range for the paraphrase, because you can be paraphrasing an entire book for all we know, and that wouldn't really make sense to give the page range for that. So here are some examples. I think the easiest way to learn this concept is with examples. So this is the most basic format at the top here, just last name, publication date. If there are multiple authors exceeding like 2 authors, you don't list out all of their names because that would get incredibly long in the middle of an essay and be very awkward. So we just write et al. Notice et does not have a period afterward. Al does. We still include the publication date. If, again, you are directly quoting, you're going to include that page number. If it's a page range, you format it slightly differently, but same thing. I have a similar example. In case there's no date, you just put ND. This next example is a little bit of a different case, and I just wanted to point out that if you say the person's name in the sentence, like according to this person, then you wouldn't write according to Smith and then in parentheses Smith 2023, because that would be redundant. So then you would just use the date as the in-text citation because it's already mentioned in the text who wrote it. And then the next example is if there's truly no author, organizational person, otherwise, you might just write an abbreviated title, or if the title is short already, you can just use the whole title. And then lastly, we have kind of the format you would use if the author is an institution. Once again, you can shorten really long institution names if the acronym is particularly well known. So our next topic is the references page. Here we just got a brief overview, also taken from the Purdue OWL. So the page number, it continues onto the references page, just same from as it was in the rest of the paper. You'll notice the word references is centered and bold-faced, and we have the indent on the second line, starting on the second line and continuing on each following line on one given citation. That's called a hanging indent, and I will show you how to do that easily in Word without messing with any formatting. Some things to note about APA, like with any citation style, the exact information and exactly how it's formatted in your references page is going to be different depending on the type of source, and you'll have to excuse the fact that PowerPoint would not let me do a hanging indent in a text box in a PowerPoint, no matter how hard I tried. But as I said, I will show you how to do that in Word in just a minute. So I wanted to point out a couple of things. For instance, with a journal article, you'll have the last name and first initial. If they have a middle initial, you'll include that as well. The date, and notice how the title is not in what we usually consider title case. So each word is not capitalized. It's capitalized the same way as would be in a sentence. The first word is capitalized. Any proper nouns would be capitalized. But otherwise, it's just like you were writing a sentence. Then the name of the journal, that is in title case. Every word will be capitalized and it will be in italics. Next, we have the volume and issue number of the journal. So in this case, we've got the volume just being 1 because this is an example. That is also in italics, and then the issue number should be in parentheses. This should not be in italics, and I believe PowerPoint did put it in italics, so please forgive that. It's a little weird because the volume number right next to the issue number is in italics. The issue number itself in parentheses is not. So make sure when you're highlighting the stretch of text that you want to put in italics, make sure it doesn't automatically include that issue number as well. Then you'll have the page range. You don't need to include the letter P to show page range in the references page. It's just as is. And then you'll include the DOI. DOI stands for Digital Object Identifier, and it's just a more stable form of a link, essentially. This is made up. If you clicked on this link, it wouldn't take you anywhere. Next, we have a web page. It's almost the exact same information. Here we're being a little bit more specific with the date. I believe that's just because for sources that are more volatile, more subject to change, APA wants that additional information if you have it. So this could be like January 14th or whatever if we have that information. In this case, the title of the web page is italicized, so it's kind of backwards from the journal article. You would also have the publishing agency. So if this were published by CNN, you would say that. If it's published by someone's blog, you would say that. And then you would include the URL. In this case, there's no DOI for a web page. It's just a normal hyperlink. And then for a book, it's a little simpler. You have, again, that last name, first initial, middle if they have one, the year that it was published, the book title. Once again, the title is in italics here, different from the journal article. And then you'll have the publisher. There are a million more types of sources that you might include. These are some of the most common ones, especially in academic papers, the kinds which you would typically be using APA for. But if you are using a different source, anything from an Instagram post to a video game to a personal blog, there are ways to cite these things. And we don't have to memorize these things. The internet exists for a reason. But just having the general principle of like, okay, you're going to need the name, you're going to need the date, the title, and generally who put this information into the world. Some other things to note, and I think I went over most of this already, the title of the source itself is not in title case for a journal article specifically. This is only for a journal article. The capitalization is the same as for a sentence. Whoops. Actually, excuse me, the title of the source is not in title case for any of the listed sources here. Also, what's italicized will change based on the source. For a journal article, the journal itself is italicized, but the individual article title is not. For a web page, that's backwards. It's the web page title that is italicized, and the publisher is not. So just be careful. Again, don't memorize that. Look it up if you need to, but just know what kind of formatting things will trip you up. Also, be familiar with general principles regardless, because it will make your life a little bit easier because you can just kind of write the citation and double check later that the periods, the commas, and the italics are in the right place. Another note, be careful with citation generators like EasyBib or whatever it may be, especially with more unconventional sources. Again, if you're trying to cite a video game or something, or an Instagram post, you might have a little bit more trouble getting that information, or even a website, because websites can vary so much in their formatting and web pages. You know, where the author is, where the publication date is. They can be at the top, it can be at the bottom. They might not have them, but there might be another date on there somewhere that it picks up as the publication date. Sometimes it can put really weird things for the author depending on where different information is. So I would just be really careful using citation generators. They can be great to reduce some typing because sometimes the information in them is correct except for like one thing and you can just change it. But just use at your own risk. However, I will say I like Zotero a lot. It is both an app and a Chrome extension that you download, and then it links with Word. So when you open Word, you open the app, and you have the Chrome extension. Anything that you look up on Chrome, whether it's a journal article that you find in a database, a web page, you can add it to the Zotero Chrome extension. And then when you create that project, that folder in the Zotero app, you can automatically format your reference page and citations in the paper in a bunch of different sources, APA just being one of them. Again, I think it's going to be a little bit more imperfect for less academic sources, but when you're writing a very academic paper, almost everything that you're using will be a journal article, and then some things from websites published by like government agencies, universities, things like that, which might be a little bit more reliable. So something like Zotero, I know other people like Mendeley, as a reference manager, can actually make your life easier. And Zotero is free, so just to throw that in there. Okay, another finicky thing about Word and how to make hanging indents work. Write the citation just normally as a block of text. Again, make sure it's double spaced. Make sure the italics, spacing, punctuation, everything is correct. You should then highlight each individual citation, so highlight just up to the end of one citation, and then on the paragraph section of like the toolbar, there's a pop-out menu, and under special indent, that's like an option with that menu, you select hanging, and it's quite easy. If you have a citation manager such as Zotero, it will do a lot of the formatting for you, but if you're trying to do it manually, this is the way that I like to do it, and it is easier than just trying to press tab or press space a bunch of times on the second or third line of a citation, because Word will try to mess up your formatting with all of the auto formatting it includes. Once again, I've included a screen capture to just show you that process. So I've already included references in bold at the top of my page here. And so what I'm going to do is just type out a sample reference. It's just completely made up, obviously. Bear with me because I'm a little slow at typing, especially when I'm remembering all the things I need and exactly how they are supposed to look. But in this case, we've got your last name, first initial. In this case, this person has a middle initial, so we're including that. The year of publication, and then insert article name here. This is going to be a journal article. Notice the lack of title case for the article. Notice that the name of the journal is in your normal title case. Notice that it's also in italics. The volume number is in italics, and the issue number is not. And then I'm including that page range with period at the end. Next, I would include the DOI. In this case, I just wrote DOI because I don't have a fake hyperlink here. But then I'm going to select the entire thing and look at the little arrow I'm pressing on the paragraph option. And if you go to the middle under indentation, you can select special indentation and put hanging, and it will automatically format this, and it won't mess up the indentations on your following references. So that's the easiest way that I found to do it. Notice that this still has a page number. Obviously, if this were a real paper, your references would not be on page 1, but that is just because this is an example page. And it is trying to start the video again. But here are some references that are resources that I like to use to remind myself of little things about APA format, or if I have a source that of a type that I don't usually cite. I really like the Purdue OWL for general APA format advice, or the APA style blog. And then for formatting the APA title page, the Writing Center at the University of, I believe, Arizona has some helpful information, although I indent a different number of times I have found to get the correct formatting in Word. But yeah, that is everything. Thank you for sticking with me thus far, and I hope this information was helpful.